Let me just start off by saying that if you ever see me walking down the street with like a SpongeBob or a Spider-Man band-aid on my finger, it's not because of my personal choice. It's really because I have a house full of children, and apparently I found out over this last week that we don't have any like skin color toned band-aids. We have nothing but comic book and animated characters. So yeah, I essentially walked around with like a couple of days with nothing but like Patrick band-aids on my finger, but it is what it is. I'm not Paul Blart. I can't really rock those type of band-aids, but you work with what you've got, I suppose. Anyways, all jokes aside, today's video is actually incredibly intense and kind of serious. And honestly, look, I've always said this before, I like to keep the channel somewhat varied and balanced, okay? I'm not always going to make videos that are, rainbows and butterflies and talking about how great McFarlane is and how the newest releases from Hasbro are just, making people lose their minds. I do a little bit of both, and so sometimes I do get incredibly negative and I criticize certain OMs or certain things that are happening within the community, but there are other times when I do a little bit of the opposite. But it's about having that balance. You don't want to just become a channel that's nothing but negativity. But in today's video, I just had to kind of call out something that I noticed here in the Valley. And this is going to be somewhat long-winded, but I wanted to kind of explain exactly my situation and how this all came together. So I live right on the border of like Scottsdale and Phoenix. I'm technically in Phoenix, so there's like I would say like a 30 to 40 mile radius of action figure stores around me. I would say there's probably like maybe 5 or 6. One of them kind of doubles as a comic shop as well as a collectible store, so I'm going to count that one. So there's probably like maybe 6 or 7 that I've gone to on a number of different occasions. However, I've never been a seller to any of these collectible stores because I know they're a business. They have to make their money. And I always thought, at a certain point, I was going to have to, maybe just because the collection of like unopened mint in card stuff was just getting ridiculous. I have maybe like 5 of those Walmart totes, and it was too much. So I decided I'm going to kind of downgrade. I'm going to sell a big chunk of my collection. All of this stuff is either lines that I never jumped into, or maybe I bought like 1 or 2 figures of and I just never really wanted to complete it, or just stuff that just didn't really fit in my display. I do plan on, by the way, this is kind of like a minor little announcement, but I do plan on revamping the entire display. There are a lot of figures that have recently come out that are kind of like upgrades of figures that I already have, and so I don't really feel like keeping those. I'll give you guys an example. Like, we are getting the new Walmart exclusive Venom, and I probably have like 3 to 4 other Venoms. I don't want to have that many. I'm just going to keep the one that I display, maybe an extra one, but I just don't want to have like an insane amount of figures just collecting dust in bins. So I did decide to part with a big chunk of it, and I decided to post them online on like Facebook Marketplace and then like OfferUp and a few other websites. And I figured at least people are going to come buy a few, maybe a handful of these figures. Unfortunately, what ended up happening was people were only interested in like the 5 to 6 figures that had any value, right? And most of these people looked like they were trying to flip the figures. They would come to me and, maybe like a figure that was worth $60-$70, they were looking to pay $40. So I could tell that they weren't really collectors. They were just looking to flip it online or something along those lines. And I just really wasn't interested in that. Parting out, a few figures here and there, I figured I'm just going to wait and see if there's somebody that's interested in the entire collection. And somebody arrived, somebody that I've actually had dealings with. I've gone to their shop a couple of times. When I first visited them, they had a tiny little shop. Fast forward like 2 to 3 years now, they have a shop that's maybe like 3 to 4 times the size of their original place of business. So they made me an offer, which really wasn't that bad. It was a little bit low, but I figured I just need to get rid of this stuff. It wasn't because I needed the money. It wasn't because anybody was breathing down my neck like a lot of relationships. I just felt like I wanted to revamp. And yes, I was going to use a lot of those funds to invest in the channel, maybe like a new mic or things of that nature, just extra stuff that I wanted, some collectibles that I have that I wanted to pre-order, stuff that I want to buy online for the channel. And so I decided I'll just invest those funds because I'm just not going to open those figures. I'm not really going to review them. and they're just collecting dust. And I really felt bad because the few times that we've had to move, it's just it's a huge issue. It's a huge cause for concern because a lot of those collectibles are brand new in package, and I didn't want to. I didn't want them to get dented, and it was this big giant deal. So I just decided I'll part with them. I told the shop owner, hey, we can meet in person. The offer's not really that bad. We're not that far off. We'll meet in person. I have a few more things that I'll add, and then we can negotiate in person because you seem like you're actually somewhat motivated to buy these collectibles. And so, as I said, I really did not want to deal with the shop, but I figured, okay, if they're going to give me at least like 40 to 50% of what the items are worth, I'm okay with that, especially considering a lot of these items were not going to move on their own. A lot of the collectibles that were in this tiny chunk of my collection were just, going for about retail online, like $15 to $20. A lot of the bulk of the value lied within like 5 to 6 figures. Those were really the ones that I could probably sell online on eBay and get quite a bit of money, but I just didn't want to go through that. I've done eBay in the past. I've dealt with customers and people just complaining about nonsense. And so I just wanted to kind of make this as quickly as I possibly and as painless as I possibly could, because it definitely was incredibly painful to leave some of those figures that had been with me now for a few years. But we came together on a deal, which, by the way, I still felt like I could have pushed him a little bit more. Now thinking back, I do regret it because I kind of like upped his offer a couple of times and he took it. So I still feel like I could have gotten a little bit more from him. But look, at the end of the day, he did take quite a few figures that could potentially just be peg warmers. They're just going to sit on his shelf for a few years before they actually sell. So I completely get his point of view, and obviously he has to pay for the venue, or he has to pay rent, and he has to pay his employees and whatnot. So I completely understand all of those things, but he let slip some things while we were negotiating that is really the main reason why I decided to make this video. So he does have, like a bin at the entrance of his store, and I kind of like saw it when I caught a little bit of a glimpse while I was walking in, and he essentially sells build-a-figure pieces or loose build-a-figure pieces, and not something that I've ever seen from any other collectibles shop. They usually just sell, like, even if they have some figures that are missing some pieces, they'll usually just have that on display, like maybe I don't know, a Man-Thing or a Thanos missing an arm or a leg or something like that, and then they'll price it accordingly. But this particular shop just has the loose build-a-figure pieces there. And you may think, well, they probably are selling for about $5 to $6. Wrong. They're selling from anywhere from like 10 to 15. So again, I wouldn't even have really thought too much about it had he not mentioned that he usually pays about $1 to $2 for these build-a-figure pieces. Now, look, I get it. He's a business. He has to make money, but that's completely outrageous. The fact that there could potentially be somebody walking through his door that is just looking to pay their rent, or somebody that's really down on their luck, and to think that he's really going to take advantage of somebody like that, it just didn't sit right with me. Like I said, in my personal opinion, or in my personal situation, I felt like I got an okay price. But if there's somebody that's walking through that door that just needs money to get by for that particular month, this person is going to completely take advantage of them by giving them $1 per build-a-figure piece and then reselling it for 15. That's less than 10% of the value of that particular item, or I should say, he's making over 90% profit. And yes, not all of it is profit, and it's such a small amount that people won't even really think too much of it. Like, he bought it for $1 and his profit is $14, but it's about the percentage, right? Especially for me, I had brought in maybe like 6 to 7 different build-a-figure pieces that I just wasn't going to complete. I wasn't interested in. But just the fact that he let that slip, and then he talked about paying roughly about like $7 for deluxe figures or build-a-figure figures. And yes, I did catch a little bit of a glimpse at some of his display cases while I was walking into his shop. And most of the deluxe / build-a-figures that he had on display were going for roughly about like $50 to $60. So you're telling me that you're paying somebody $7 and then reselling it for about $50 to $60, in some cases even higher. I just feel like the profit margin is so insane for this particular shop that it almost made me laugh out loud. Not in that particular moment, because I got kind of what I wanted, but kind of sitting at home and thinking back, I just felt like it's really sketchy business ethics from this particular shop. And really, I think I've gone to at least one other shop where I sold maybe like 2 to 3 different things that I just didn't want. Most of it was like Funko Pop Chase figures and things of that nature that had a little bit of value, just to kind of like get an idea of what they would give, and it was somewhat similar. I just feel like it's really sketchy. And look, I've dabbled in other hobbies. I'll give you guys an example. Like, I just recently bought the new Balvin's Jordans that I believe I paid about, like, I don't remember exactly what the price was. I believe I paid about like $270. I ended up reselling those shoes at a shop. Okay, this is a business that has to make money, and they actually offered me, and I think I ended up kind of negotiating and hardballing with them as well, but I ended up getting about $400, and they were going to resell this shoe for about like $480, because I think StockX had them at like $460 with fees and everything, and shipping probably, you know, went up to like about $480. So that makes way more sense to me. The fact that I'm selling a shoe to them and their profits is not way more than my profit. I think it's kind of balanced to an extent, and that's exactly why I felt like I needed to make this video. I feel like there are a lot of shops out there that are doing these kind of like weird, really shady business practices, and like I said, most of the time that they're able to get really good deals like this is probably from a collector that just is down on their luck, and I completely feel for them. As I said, for me personally, I was prepared to walk out with my entire collection that I had brought in, which was like 2 bins worth, just because I really didn't need the money, and if I didn't get the offer that I wanted, I was willing to walk away from it. It really wasn't that big of a deal, aside from like driving 30 minutes, and I was really tired from work. But you know, I've always been somewhat stable in terms of my finances. If I have ever had to pick up a second job, I do it. You know, I've had 2 jobs for like about 2 to 3 years now, and so the hobby's never like kicked me down. It's never put me in a situation where I have to sell something or I have to do something for my finances. I've always been somewhat stable in that regard, and I've never been with my back against the wall. But I can only imagine a collector that really needs that money. He's going to walk in there, and these type of ridiculous prices are going to be thrown at this individual. To me, it's a joke, and it feels like there's a lot of predatory practices when it comes down to these shops. If you're coming in there assuming that you're going to get at least, I think a fair offer would have been like, bare minimum like 30% of what your item is worth. In some cases, they're probably going to overpay because it's something that has a lot of demand. But let's say if it's like a $20 figure, or let's say a $25 figure, the shop should be able to at least compensate you for a percentage of that, right? Like at least maybe like a $7 to $8 offer is okay. Same thing with like a deluxe figure. If that shop is going to sell it for, let's say, $60, it's not ridiculous to assume that they can give you maybe $20 instead of like a $7 to $5 offer. As I said prior, I've been a part of multiple different hobbies. Growing up, I was really big into shoes for a long period of time. I would, I had a pretty good collection. I would often sell stuff here and there if I wasn't as interested in it anymore. And usually I was able to get decent value, even when I go to these stores that are legitimate businesses that have to pay employees and everything that goes into having an action figure store. And usually I would get a decent offer. I know I'm not going to get exactly what they're going for online, but there's not this huge profit margin for them. They're going to make their money, but they leave you a little bit of room as well. Same thing with comic books. I collected comic books for an extended period of time. I don't do it as much. I dabble here and there, but same thing when it came down to comic books. If you went to a comic shop, they would work with you. They gave you a decent offer. All in all, I will just say, first of all, if you have to sell a chunk of your collection, try finding other avenues. There are other ways of selling your collectibles aside from a toy store. But let's just say if your back is against the wall and you really just want to get rid of it, and you go to a toy store, try to do the math on it, kind of have a ballpark idea of how much you should be getting, like at least 30 to 40% of what the collectibles are worth as a whole. Always push the business to try to offer a little bit more, which is something that I did repeatedly through our negotiation. Another big thing to do, or to be willing to do, is just to walk away from the deal if it doesn't really benefit you, or if you feel like they're trying to take advantage of you. Don't be afraid to walk out. Be upfront. Maybe that deal isn't going to work for me. it's all good. Have a good one. And usually they're willing to work with you even a little bit more if they see that you're willing to walk away from the deal, especially if they've already spent a few minutes negotiating with you and they have a good idea of what the collectibles are worth. Another really good suggestion, and this is something that I feel like I probably should have done myself, is try piecing off your collectibles in smaller lots. That way the store actually goes through every single collectible rather than just them trying to give you a bulk offer, which in some cases, if you bring a giant collection, they're not even going to piece out what each individual figure is worth. They're just going to go and try to give you like a lowball offer. On the other hand, if you bring like, let's say 7 to 8 figures, they can kind of break it down a little bit more, and they'll be willing to, rather than, you know, going through 30 to 40 different figures. So that would probably be a suggestion. Piece it off little by little, and that way you'll probably get a lot more in value. If you're like me and you actually are still planning on investing that stuff into your collectibles, ask about store credit. So if you know, sometimes they'll give you a little bit more. Like, let's say if they say, hey, I'll give you $600 for all of the collectibles cash. If you ask about stored credit, they'll usually up it to like maybe $670, maybe even $700, depending on the store. They'll usually give you more credit, and that way you can purchase from them if they have something that you're interested in. But in most cases, they've already marked up all of their stuff, so it really doesn't make sense. But just in case, if they have something that you really want, they'll usually give you a little bit more in store credit. But as I said, I've rambled long enough. I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. As I said, I never in a million years thought that I would be selling to a shop, just because I never really thought about getting rid of any of my collectibles. I just thought anything that is not going to my display, I'm just going to keep putting in the bins. But then I realized it's just taking up too much space, and I really want to be able to display stuff. I really want to feel happy and fulfilled when I'm displaying figures. I don't want to just have like a random display of figures that don't really go together, or they're not as cohesive. I don't want my display to be in disarray, and I also don't want to have multiples of different characters, and I don't want to have older versions of characters. I mean, I don't want to have like 20 different Venoms all spanning different, you know, time eras, some of them being slightly upgrades of other ones. I just want to have like the definitive version, like I said, maybe a backup, and that's it. I just don't want to have a ton of different figures collecting dust. So that was ultimately my objective. As I said, most of the money that I received, I'm just going to throw back into the hobby. I already have a few things on pre-order. I probably am looking to upgrade stuff, maybe a new camera, mic, things of that nature. I've always wanted to, for example, go to a convention, which up to this point, I only do small little toy shows or collectible shows here. I haven't really done like a full-on convention. So those are things that I'm working towards in the future. I really want to, you know, expand the channel. I want to grow on the type of stuff that I review, which I rarely get into reviews, but it's stuff that I really want to do. And so I felt like, you know, that's a good opportunity. I have the extra little cash from some of the stuff that I sold. I do plan on selling some other stuff. I still held on to some figures that were just like near and dear to my heart and soul, but eventually I do plan on getting rid of that. And like I said, a lot of the stuff that I am selling, it's like older, outdated stuff with like older tech. We already have new Spider-Man, new, you know, Iron Mans, and so on and so forth, Captain Americas with pinless technology, you know, double lap crunch, things of that nature. So I will be looking to upgrade everything. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Like I said, I don't like getting negative. I like to stay somewhat positive on the channel, but sometimes you just have to get down and dirty. You just have to like speak your mind, and this is something that I feel like everybody needs to be aware of. These toy stores can be very predatory, especially towards people that just, you know, maybe need money, they're down on their luck and things of that nature, and they really take advantage of them. So like I said, just be willing to walk away, be aware of how much your stuff is worth, and be safe about it. You know, just have insight into exactly what it is that you're doing. So thank you guys so much for listening to me rant here for a few minutes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video or found some value here. If you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure to stay tuned, because we upload stuff like this pretty consistently. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and as always, don't forget the most important part of the hobby is to enjoy it. So make sure you do that. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.